Pacers lose to the Bucks right here in Fiserv Forum. They got it close late, but that is a story for a different day. The story of this one is the bench. Holy smokes, was the bench bad, and it's been bad for a bit now. Pacers needed way more in a crucial loss, and we'll have much more to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Sunday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, still in the arena court behind me, where the Pacers just lost their biggest game of the regular season. It will probably finish the regular season as their biggest game. It was close late, but that does not describe the story of this game at all. Even when the Pacers were close in this game, it didn't feel that way because they only had a few effective players and a few effective lineups, and everything else they put on the court product-wise was just dreadful in this game. The mixing and matching, the bench, just as bad as it gets for the Pacers, a team that prides themselves on depth, a team that the way they play kind of requires depth. And in this game, their depth cost them majorly. If their bench was okay in this game, the Pacers win. If their bench was merely a little bit bad, they probably win this game. Their bench was god-awful, start to finish, and it cost them. 126-119 the final. Pacers lose by 7. Again, they had it within 3, I think, late. Something like that. They could have got it within 3. Didn't happen. I could talk about all sorts of little stuff that mattered in this game. The Pacers missed some layups they easily could make. They found 2 3-point shooters in the first quarter, right? They had a lot of stuff that was little that mattered, but their bench was a big thing that mattered and cost them completely. And we have to talk about the bench. And I just did a bench segment, I think last week, on how bad their bench has been since Mathurin went to the bench, since even before that, since the whole season, really. And I have to talk about it again because it was the story of their biggest game of the season. So let's use some numbers to describe this. The Pacers' most played lineup in this game was their starting 5. Turner, Siakam, Nembhard, Haliburton, and Nesmith played almost 20 minutes, 19 minutes, 53 seconds. They won those minutes by 10. That's great. 20 minutes of action. Pacers win by 10 with their best 5. Turner was probably the worst member of that starting 5 today. And lo and behold, the Pacers closed with Obi Toppin at the 5, as they should. Toppin actually played okay, adds juice to these Bucks games. His defense wasn't great, but his offense was good enough. Thomas Bryant could hardly play in this game because he was not good at all. Neither was anyone in the second unit. So Toppin had to play sometimes when Bryant would normally play. And so then Turner played when sometimes Bryant played. It just doesn't matter. The Toppin, instead of Turner plus starters group, played 8 minutes and 41 seconds. That was the Pacers' second most used lineup, plus 16 in those minutes. That group closed and was very good, right? The starters, or predominantly starter units, were very good in this game. And those 2 units I just described were plus 26 combined in 28 minutes. And I can't do math very quickly, 30-something seconds. The other 19 minutes and 20-something seconds, the Pacers were over minus 30 in this game, minus 33 in any other group. Dreadful in every way. And people will want to say, oh, the combinations were wrong or whatever. Like, a lot of these combinations have been much better than this. Not good necessarily, but much better than this a lot this year. Last Thursday in Atlanta, the Pacers lost their bench was bad. The next 3 games after that, they got good enough bench games that would have won them that game in Atlanta that they lost. Similarly, if any of their 3 bench games before this game happened tonight, they would have won this game. But their bench, this was the worst performance of the season, and it was not even close. Plus minus can be a bad indicator of individual game success. For example, Siakam was very frequently the one starter with bench groups that he was -2 in a game that he was largely very good at, right? In this game, it tells a lot of the story. Bennedict Mathurin, 11 minutes, 54 seconds, -34. TJ McConnell, 16 minutes, 17 seconds, -34. Thomas Bryant, 4 minutes and 40 seconds, not even a 5-minute stint, -14. Whew, he's been rough for a couple weeks now. Ben Shepherd, 11 minutes, 30 seconds, -19. Old reliable, not old reliable today. That is awful for the Pacers. And it wasn't even what it was last night in Philly. Last night in Philly, the Pacers went to a all 5-man bench group. And I said, I got why they did it because of the back-to-back. It didn't work. It was bad. They did not go to that group in this game. Never 1 minute of this game did the Pacers have all 5 bench players together. They did go to 4 bench guy groups. Let's talk about those groups. today. One of them was Bryant, Toppin, Mathurin, McConnell, Haliburton. So a star player and 4 bench players. 52 seconds minus 4. I believe that 52 seconds was the start of the second or fourth quarter. I can't remember. Regardless, a star player, 4 bench players, awful. The other 2 were, one of them was Siakam, Bryant, Mathurin, Shepherd, McConnell. So Siakam in the bench. That happens almost every game, right? To close either to close the first and third or start the second and fourth, right? That happens all the time. In this game, that was their third most used lineup, 3 minutes and 38 seconds, minus 10. Dreadful. And then the other one was Siakam with the bench, except instead of Thomas Bryant, it was Obi. So small ball bench. They've gone to that 2 games in a row, 3 minutes and 15 seconds, minus 9. You can do math quickly. That means the 3 lineups that had 4 bench players in them. And the Pacers in this game played 10 guys, technically, but Bryant barely played, regardless. The 3 lineups they played that had 4 bench players in were combined minus 23 in a 7-point loss. The Pacers were plus 16 across all their groups. And that doesn't even tell the story perfectly. Some 3-man groups were bad, but those groups were awful. And oh, by the way, we're talking about a combined like 8 minutes of play where they were minus 23. Awful, 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 awful. I don't know what to say. Damian Lillard doing the post-game walk-off interview with the Bucks, right? He's being interviewed by the in-arena host who presumably does radio. Regardless of that, they asked about those minutes. Damian Lillard says, in a game like this, where their bench is usually dominating the other team's bench, we had to step it up, and we did. That is the perception of the Pacers bench. Last year, largely these same players, minus Thomas Bryant, plus Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson, were good. We're very good, but playoff reliably good. And I talked about it all the time down the stretch of last season, to the point that it was exhausting to listen to, I'm sure. They would start fourth quarters with McConnell and a bench group out there when they were winning. Their opponent would trot out their starters and try to make a comeback, and the McConnell-led group would win those minutes, and the Pacers would win the game right there. That's it. This year, we'll get to more numbers in a minute. Their bench, they can't even go even in those minutes. They've been horrible. In this game, they were dreadful. They ebb and flow a little bit, such is the life of depth players in the NBA, right? Consistency can be an issue in a way that it was not for the Pacers last year. Some games they can be okay on offense. Some games they can be okay on defense. If you made me point to one end of the floor, I thought the bench was worse tonight, I would say defense. Mathurin was 2 for 3. Every other bench player was at best 33% from the field. In total, Mathurin, Toppin, McConnell, Bryant, and Shepherd together made 7 shots on 22 attempts. They were awful, right? They were just awful. A combined 18 points for the Pacers second unit in this game. Kevin Porter Jr. alone had 16. Gary Trent had 13, right? They were awful on offense. Not good, not providing enough punch, not filling in gaps around the starters who were largely very good. Nesmith, Siakam, and Haliburton were terrific in this game, combining for 80 points. And they lost because the bench was that bad. And I think they were worse defensively in this game. This is where it stood out to me. They would come in and immediately give up anything. Thomas Bryant, look, guarding Giannis is a tough task, obviously. I'm not saying he did any worse than anybody else in that, but non-Giannis players just twisting around him or one dribble right past him. Mathurin comes in. Taurean Prince, not even a ball handler, usually. 2 dribbles right by him, right? TJ McConnell did not have any sort of pest or deterrence level in this game. And at his height, if he can't do that, he's not that helpful on the defensive end, right? Ben Shepherd missing his shots means he's just running around on they just had nothing defensively. Toppin's defensive level's just never been there. I thought Toppin, despite his inefficient night, actually played okay today. 2 decent games in a row for him. Though he actually did fit in well when paired with starters in a way that no other bench player did. Many of you will probably say I thought the bench was worse on offense. I thought the combinations were bad, which I did. They were played bad in this game. The results say they were bad. These are combinations that have been better than this before, right? I'm not even saying that the flow of the rotation felt weird to me. It was a little different. It was a back-to-back. They needed to win, so they were hammering their starters a little heavier. And Rick Carlisle even said post-game in a way that didn't feel like a fall on the sword kind of comment, but actually felt like an admission of like, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong. He said of the second unit, it was a struggle. Maybe I'm subbing too many guys at once. That's why I really wanted to go to the 4 bench players together groups. Because if it's too many subs at once, that's the problem. He wants to, and almost always does, outside of back-to-back situations, he wants to have one of Siakam or Haliburton on the floor at all times. Makes sense. He also has acknowledged, I'm working on a story on this, is cognizant of player minutes in single games over certain stretches, etc., because it's a long season and they're focused on the postseason. Pascal Siakam's agent praised Rick Carlisle for this exact thing in the offseason. That's what made me want to start the story. They have a style with their tempo that requires them to play a certain number of ball handlers anytime, play fast. You need depth to be able to play fast a lot, right? Other teams are starting to emulate that in the NBA. We've seen that trend, I think, start to creep that way. They have to play a certain number of players, a certain number of minutes, especially in the regular season every night. I understand that. But in a game like this, it's so hard when you're trying to do what you usually do that's had at least a decent amount of success. Excuse me, they're cleaning up in here. And you get nothing from it, just nothing. The starters were sensationally good as a unit, as pairings, whatever you want to call it. They were just awesome. And the Pacers could not win. 2 players being individually minus 34 is unheard of. So that is part of the story, that this one game, the bench was bad. However, this is not a one-game thing. I just did this in Atlanta. I was asking players and Rick Carlisle about the bench. So let's talk about it again, right? Since February 1st, I'm picking that because I keep tweeting month-ish for the Pacers bench. It's really been a full season thing. In fact, Kyle Taylor, who was on this week, he hit us with the stats. I will read his tweet first before I go with my query. For the season, the Pacers with 4 or 5 starters on the floor, plus 13.4 net rating. Great. That's awesome. That's how good teams should be. With 2 or 3 starters on the floor, minus 6.3. With 0 1 starter, plus 0.94. The mixed groups are getting smoked in this game. The 0 to 1 starter minutes also went bad. And so the mixed groups and those were terrible. Just horrible. Since Mathurin moved to the bench, the mixed groups with 3 or fewer starters on the floor, minus 16.3 net rating. That is similar to what I was going for. Since February 1, which is a very arbitrary cutoff. Neesmith returned not long before that, but that's just to me when it started to feel worse. It's been not good all season. Kyle's numbers were all season. February 1st, late January. Pacers played great in January, right? So maybe that's it. The results changed. But that's to me when it started to feel watching them play worse. I just clicked the wrong tab, excuse me. In 514 minutes with 3 or fewer starters on the floor since February 1st, the Pacers are minus 85 points in 500 minutes, right? Little over 10 games of time, minus 85. They're losing by 8 points a game with just their bench. Like, that is horrible. That is just horrible. I could do the rating calculations, but I'm actually standing kind of far away from my computer for this recording, so you'd see me lean in and type, and it would look really bad. It's a bad net rating. I could just change the query really quickly. I'm not going to. It just has to be better than that. And it wasn't. And it hasn't been for a while. The raw numbers say it. The per possession numbers say it. You can watch them play. Last year, McConnell was exceptional. His isolation scoring, his passing. I talked about that in a segment in January when his shot started to look a little worse. That hasn't been there as much. The creation hasn't been there. Obi Toppin, his 3, worse, right? That's what made him way more playable last year. The thought was that he'd fit well with Tyrese and the Pacers. He could play with tempo and finish above the rim, and he could do all that. If the 3 is worse, that made him a perfect fit. He's a less good fit, although he still has games like this where his juice is very important. Ben Mathurin, when his defense on ball isn't there, right? He's not giving you anything on defense, hardly. Again, this game, his defense was quite bad, I thought. His offense was fine. He was 2 for 3, made both of his threes. Still didn't give him enough to play. They got smoked in his minutes. Thomas Bryant, I wrote about him right around the trade deadline about good pickup on the minimum, basically got him for free. Since then, really rough. His defense has felt worse. He's not getting the coined FU rebound that he usually gets every game, right? Hasn't been as good. I think he would admit that. We have hardly talked to him, so I haven't said anything. And Ben Shepherd, while his last 15 game sample size of threes is actually okay in terms of the percentage, the volume's not that high. And you don't feel the defense as much when the whole unit's defense stinks. Like, I thought he defended Trae Young pretty well last week, but outside of that, I can't really name a notable on-ball defensive game from him. Rough, really rough from a group that last year was great. This isn't just they downgraded centers thing. Like, you could point to everybody and say they're doing this or that worse, especially right now. And this was there's no such thing as a must-win game. Well, there is. In the playoffs, there is. In a regular season game, it's very rarely a must-win game. This is as close as it gets. This is the game the Pacers needed to win the most this regular season because of their previous results. Their starters were good enough. Their best players were good enough. Their bench was so bad that did not matter. A lot of other stuff went bad for the Pacers today. A lot of stuff went good for the Pacers today. I would like to talk about all that and the ramifications of this loss for the Pacers coming up next year on Locked On Pacers. Before we do that, let's talk about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can start managing your money and start building wealth. They have great insights. You can realize how much you're spending on things like food delivery. You can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check all your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is easier than ever, too. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off. How about that? Your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Bucks has to be your second listen. Huge win for the Bucks. They take the season series over the Pacers 3-1. Goofy series this year, right? The Bucks will think the only game they lost, they should have won because they were winning until a miraculous Tyrese Haliburton shot. Tonight, the Pacers got great play from their starters and terrible play from their bench. The first game in here during the NBA Cup, Bucks fans blasted me a little bit rightly because I said the Pacers actually played as good as the Bucks for 40 minutes in that game. The start of that game was dreadful for the Pacers and they lost. And the New Year's Eve, the Pacers were winning in the fourth quarter. Giannis hit some jumpers, and he's gotten a lot better at that, by the way. That was a big story of this game, too. And the Pacers folded against the zone. This season series is like 8 minutes of better Pacers play away from being much different. But they don't get that benefit of the doubt. That is the most rosy way possible of looking at it. The Bucks were better in those 8 minutes. They're a veteran team, and they're quite good. And they deserve a lot of credit for being better than the Pacers in those moments. The ramifications, huge. Pacers lose that head-to-head tiebreaker with the Bucks. And now the three-way, I'd have to check this, Bucks, Pacers, Pistons tie could be undecided. Bucks and Pistons play the last 2 games of the season against each other, which for the Pacers is good that one of them is going to lose both of those games, obviously. But that's still huge for lots of reasons for the Pacers. Look, the Bucks schedule is really hard the rest of the way, but they beat the Lakers. They just beat the Pacers. They're playing a little better. The only good news for the Pacers is that the Pistons lost tonight and they lost to the Wizards earlier this week, but they can't take solace in that. They themselves have lost now 4 or 5, right? And have lost the tiebreaker with the Bucks. The ramifications tonight were huge. Pacers sit in 5th right now, but Minnesota coming up and then an easier homestand. They need to be very good results-wise on that homestand. They've not been playing great. Of late, they've lost some close games, several close games, and got blown out by the Bulls. Not a good night for the Pacers. Other stuff in this game that I thought was either good or bad for various reasons. The Pacers were pretty good defending Giannis on Tuesday, as good as you can be in that game. Pascal defended him pretty well. At least that's what people said. And don't get me wrong, I thought Pascal was physical with him in the way you're allowed to be, or at least the way that like legally you're allowed to be without actually fouling him. But the Pacers doubles came well, and Giannis, he calls himself pass first. He got off the ball a lot, and other guys didn't make shots. Tonight, 2 things were different. One, Giannis was more aggressive. He took 19 shots in this game. He was really hunting to get himself going around the basket. 6 free throws as well, 34, 10, and 7. He was excellent at busting up that Pacers coverage. But 2, those doubles, which makes sense. It just worked on Tuesday, right? People will kill them for this. That is by default leaving someone else open. I'm not going to crush the Pacers for that. That's intentional in some ways. It's a 5-man defensive scheme. That's what Aaron Nesmith called it after the game. Well, the Bucks made their threes, 40.5% of them, 15 for 37 from deep. Dame made 6 of 12. The Pacers after the game said, yeah, some of those were tough. They were, but yeah, he's Damian Lillard. He makes them. So their Giannis defense was what they hoped it could be, at least schematically, but the actual effect of it and the way they did it compared to Tuesday, much worse. And there were some stretches of this game where neither Nesmith or Siakam was on the floor. Those lineups were terrible. 1 in plus minus and 2 in the way they could defend Giannis. Those 2 were the best defenders of him. I was stunned. They went to it in the second half after how bad it was in the first half. That was a bad thing for the Pacers, and that's a Carlisle thing, right? Having those groups out there just didn't work at all. I can't find them and their plus minuses very quickly, but just know that did happen. And all in all, not a great defensive game for the Pacers. The Bucks were shooting 70%, I believe, after the first quarter. I think they missed 4 of their first 18 shots. A lot of the stuff would have been the story had the bench not been so bad, but to look for, the Bucks were 14 for 18 after 10 minutes, and they only missed 1 2-pointer at that time. The Pacers made 6 threes in the first quarter, and they were down by 8. Right, the Pacers defense was just not that great in this game. And then in the first half, speaks to another reason the Pacers bench being so bad hurt in this game. The Bucks won the non-Giannis minutes by 15 in the first half. You can't lose the non-Giannis minutes, period. Nonetheless, by that much, if the Pacers were better there, they probably win this game. In fact, as this game settles out, Giannis fouls out with 2 fouls that I thought were kind of weak. Giannis was +2. You could do the math. The Bucks won by 7. That means they won the minutes without him by 5. He played 34.5 minutes and fouled out. 13.5 minutes without Giannis on the floor. The Pacers should be winning those minutes. And if they won them by just 3 today, they would have won this game. Instead, they lost them by 5. Again, credit the Bucks. Dame was better. Taurean Prince was good. Brook Lopez killed the Pacers all week. Gary Trent was good. Kevin Porter made enough shots and 9 free throw attempts for him, right? And they were great from the line in this game. The Bucks deserve a lot of credit for that. Pacers, though, were worse in a lot of ways. They were pretty good on Tuesday. The way the Bucks defend Pascal Siakam and the Pacers in general leaves Myles Turner open. He took 10 threes in this game. They were all great looks. He missed 8 of them. That hurt a lot for the Pacers in this one. And that was a theme from the postseason last year. I am trying to check Tuesday's box score as well, but I think he took a lot of threes in that game, right? The way that this Bucks team defends the Pacers is going to give up that shot. He's got to make them. He did last year when things were important and mattered. He absolutely did not today. Yeah, Tuesday, Myles Turner 0 for 2. Oh, that's one quarter. Tony, you're better than that. Myles Turner 1 for 8 from deep in that game, right? Just has to be better, and wasn't from deep. So that means this week against the Bucks, Myles Turner 3 for 18 from 3. It's great that the Pacers are playing a way that they can recognize, hey, Myles Turner is open for 18 threes in 2 games. He did not make enough of them. It almost cost them on Tuesday. It did cost them a little bit in this one. Not even close to the Pacers' biggest issue to me. Missing open threes happens. It happened against the Sixers, and they found a way to win. Okay, other stuff from this game. Some good things. Aaron Nesmith was exceptional. A career high 30 points, 6 made threes, 12 points not from that, 5 twos and 2 free throws. The threes are falling for him, which obviously is a very results-based way of saying, hey, he looks good. He's playing better. Yes, everyone can see that. The stuff he's doing when he's run off the line has been so good, so good. The last, let's say, month since the All-Star break. It's been a month now. That's been really huge for the Pacers, earning that role. He's playing 36 minutes this game, plus 27 was Aaron Nesmith. I mean, they just were awesome in his minutes because he could score. The Bucks were willing to leave him open, and he punished them for it. And he defended pretty well in this game. Maybe the best game of his career. Shame that it ends this way and will not be remembered for hardly anything besides that he scored 30 points because he was awesome. Siakam, second quarter, 17 points. He had 26 total. The Pacers would have been down 25 to 30 at halftime if it weren't for that. He was amazing in that period. 12 for 22 in total, 7 boards as well. He was great. Tyrese Haliburton in his home state, 9 for 16 from the field, 7 for 10 on twos, 10 twos. That's usually the mark of a good Tyrese Haliburton rim pressure game. If you've been listening to this podcast a lot, you know I always make that point. 5 free throw attempts for him, led the Pacers, 15 assists, no turnovers. So to be clear, the 3 players I just described, 80 points for Nesmith, Siakam, Haliburton. Haliburton had 15 assists, no turnovers. Siakam was great. Nesmith was exceptional, and they lost. That's how bad the bench was. That's how much they needed Turner to make some shots. And Nembhard was okay. He was plus 27. His defense was fine, but just not enough. That one stings. I mean, that one stinks for the Pacers. They came back, roaring back twice, down 19 in the second quarter. I thought they were sunk at that point with how bad the bench was playing. And then they roared back in and made it close by halftime. It's a 5-point game. Then the Bucks went up 21 early in the fourth. The Pacers got it all the way down to 3. I think they were down 4 with the ball or 5 with the ball and want to find the possession. That it felt like the Pacers had one more chance at this point. Yes, it was 114-120. They force a miss on Dame. They come down, and Obi Toppin 7 seconds into a possession. He was kind of open, but he took a deep 3, didn't even draw iron. That felt like the chance where if they hit it and got it to 3 late, Giannis had fouled out at that point. They had a chance. Alas, the miss. The Bucks did just enough to hold on and get it done. To their credit, again, they played quite well in this game. They do deserve credit for all that, but this game will be remembered as this will be the face of the Pacers bench struggles this game. I already talked about all of it. I don't want to rehash it again, but that's why they lost. They have to find a way to make their bench better, whether that's the way that they bring guys in, whether that's those guys just simply being better. And to me, I hate to say it, the play better adjustment's probably the answer for that group. Whether it's something else completely, Jarris Walker playing instead of someone else in this particular game, maybe, I guess. And I said that part of the reason I would have done what the Pacers did, right, in terms of playing the guys they do instead of Jarris. But if this is what they're going to get from that product, they shouldn't do that, right? So maybe something's got to change. I'll write about it. I'll dig into the numbers and figure it out. Not a good game from the Pacers. They lose. They need to figure out how to get better play from their second unit. They've lost 4 or 5, and there's about a month of their season left. Well, much more here on Locked On Pacers. Tomorrow we'll do standings watch. We'll do a little more bench talk. We'll figure out some other stuff to talk about. Then somehow, for the first time all season, they play the Minnesota Timberwolves on Monday, and the Wolves are red hot. That's going to be tough, especially on a 3rd and 4 nights. That sound is my sound. To get out of here, thank you all for listening. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony Arice. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. You can find me on Locked On NBA tonight as well. I'll talk about the rest of the games around the association with Rylan Stiles. Thank you all for watching or listening. See you very soon.